All right, so I kind of wanted to weigh in on the drama regarding Stop Killing Games. Some of you might know what the movement is. I hope I have a good enough idea of it, but basically my understanding is the individual behind the channel, Accursed Farms, has started a movement called Stop Killing Games, and basically the idea of the movement is to have games persisted over time, and right now in the games space, it's kind of newer, probably like the newest form of media. There's more popularity. It's a more common form of entertainment amongst a lot of people. But basically it's to preserve the games so that a publisher, a studio, developers, what have you, they cannot just end a game and end the life cycle of a game. So if you're a consumer and you purchase a game, you have access to that game, ideally indefinitely. There's some things that I want to get into with regards to live service games and other things like that. I'm not sure with these specifics. That's why there's been a little bit of drama between Pirate Software and Accursed Farms. But I thought the short segment of this video was pretty decent. I say short, but it's like 20 minutes. But we'll jump into it and we'll watch it, check it out, and give our thoughts. And let's get started.
Okay, I really don't want to do this next part, but it's become a liability for the campaign for me not to. Our biggest critic by far is YouTuber and streamer Pirate Software, who goes by Thor. If your only exposure to Stop Killing Games has been this video, then you've been misinformed. This video is by someone who does not understand the campaign, has been trying to stop it, and has been making up what it is about. I am not saying that lightly. I will prove it in a minute. Now you might be thinking, okay, so some YouTuber got something wrong on the internet. So what? See, that was my thinking too. The problem is how incredibly influential this YouTuber has been. Remember that list of coverage on the campaign? Well, best I can tell, Thor's coverage has been bigger than literally anyone else on those lists, except Asmongold. And the only video Asmongold had on this bigger than Thor's was about Thor's video. So for all practical purposes, Thor here has been the #1 voice on the campaign, and he's been lying about what it is. That's a bit loaded though. In this case, I'm using the second definition of lie. I have no evidence it's the first. This video came out right as we were building momentum, then except for one boost in Germany, the signatures started drying up like clockwork. This put me in kind of a no-win scenario too, because if I ignored it, then a lot of people were going to get misinformed about the campaign. But if I did a response video, which is not something I wanted to do anyway, then it might look like drama farming, which could understandably turn off a lot of people from the campaign, because it's not about that at all. So I quickly made this video trying to clear up all misconceptions and concerns about the initiative. I saw this one and I think it was with timestamps for everyone's questions, hoping the truth would eventually come out. I can see now that was a mistake. I should have just embraced the drama. To this day, I'm still getting frequent comments and emails about the same falsehoods about the campaign that originated in this video. Well, now I have nothing to lose. If we don't get the signatures, then none of this matters anyway.
See if we can clear these falsehoods up. So if this campaign is failing because of me not talking about this, then I'll at least correct history here on the way down. I'll get this over with and go over what I think are the biggest points of Pirate Software's videos. I'm not going to go over everything because collectively, Thor has made hours of video on both me and the movement. I'd be here forever. That's pretty insane.
Believe me, I could address smaller things too, and kind of already have. All right, let's start. Okay, point #1. Thor does not understand what Stop Killing Games is.
Okay.
Here it is in his words.
So for those who don't understand, the Stop Killing Games initiatives is basically we don't want single-player games to have DRM that the developers can turn off and thus render the single-player games inactive anymore. This is what they want to change. They need to be specific that they're talking about single-player games that do not need a server to support them.
No.
And as much as they want it to be about specifically games where it is a single-player game that has always online functionality, it would impact every live service game that exists. Instead of just targeting single-player, always online games.
No, that's not what it is.
Okay.
Stop Killing Games includes single-player games, but nothing about it is specific to them. He completely made that up, and I have no idea where he got that impression.
That's where I end up being a little confused. So if we're talking about a single player experience that requires an online connection to the publisher's servers or the studio servers, and I believe the best scenario or the best example of this and stop killing games actually being a thing, the movement having some concrete validity, is The Crew. And I believe Ubisoft was the publisher on that one. And basically the whole Crew was like a racing game, and I think it became inert as soon as, like, unusable as soon as they shut the servers down. So you could easily have a single player experience, a racing experience, and I believe it maybe even was fully single player. But just because the servers were shut down, the game was rendered useless. So that is a strong example, and I don't think anybody would argue against that for games not being completely destroyed and the consumer's rights not being violated, right? So I think that if Stop Killing Games encompasses that scenario, that makes sense, and I don't think anybody would argue against that. What I'm confused about is where other scenarios come into play. So it's not just single player games, it's multiplayer games as well. So that's what Accursed Farms just said. It's not just single player games. So if it is multiplayer games, then what kind of multiplayer game examples are we talking about? And how far would that go? For me, that's the key point here. And I think that's kind of where Thor is getting at, because he's like Pirate Software is getting at, is because he's talking about the fact that there are live service games. So what happens in these scenarios? If you're talking about connection to a server and the game is killed off, then that's most likely where this whole movement is heading, right? It doesn't explicitly say that as far as I can tell, and Accursed Farms is here to clear it up, but that's where my thought pattern goes as well. I know it doesn't seem like it's said anywhere. I haven't delved too deep into the Stop Killing Games movement. I've watched a few videos from other creators, like I think it's Some Ordinary Gamer, etc. So I've put in like an hour's worth of just listening to other videos and what have you. But yeah, what does this mean for creators and gamers and developers, right? If you're a small developer and you're trying to build a live service game, is this going to impact you in the future? That's my biggest worry after being a developer for nearly a decade, and also just recently starting on game development itself. I work in another industry, business process management kind of stuff. But if you're a game developer and you're small, how might that impact you in the future? Versus, if you're a big publisher, you can afford the costs most likely. But still, what are those costs? Both with regards to development time and effort, as well as money. So that's just kind of the immediate thoughts that come to my mind, and where I think Thor is coming from. He's coming from a different perspective, a different angle, not the consumer angle so much as a developer angle, right? So I think that's something that we have to kind of look into. But
this is what I mean. It's harder for gamers to understand this because they come with so many assumptions. It's like that saying about doctors being the worst patients. So let's clear this up. It's the first line on the website.
Okay, let's pause. Stop Killing Games is a consumer movement started to challenge the legality of publishers destroying video games they have sold to customers. I mean, that sentiment sounds great, right? And who would be against that? But reading further, an increasing number of video games are sold effectively as goods with no stated expiration date, but designated or designed to be completely unplayable as soon as support from the publisher ends. Okay, so live service games should be a good example of that. Games I'm familiar with are like PUBG, Apex Legends, etc. I don't think there's any single player mode. It's just online play. And most likely MMOs. Like, I used to play Phantasy Star Online and Phantasy Star Universe, and I was online actively playing at the time that the Xbox servers shut down for both of those games. Yes, I'm a Sega fan, so those are my latest played MMOs. But anyways, yeah, so like, it sucks, and I wish it didn't happen, but understanding the amount of effort and also what the transition looks like, I think that's important. So I don't know kind of the kind of each side here, Accursed Farms versus Pirate Software, but I see validity to both sides. But yeah, this practice is a form of planned obsolescence and is not only detrimental to customers, but makes preservation effectively impossible. That's true. Furthermore, the legality of this practice is largely untested in many countries. Okay, fair enough. Over the past year, we have successfully escalated complaints on this problem to consumer agencies in France, Germany, Australia, and have brought forth petitions for new law on this problem to various countries. A list of the actions taken to date can be viewed here. As of 2025, most consumer action on this matter has concluded, and we are awaiting decisions on it from several governments. However, there are a few remaining avenues left where people can participate if they're eligible. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense, right? Once again, the legality element. What are we looking at here? What are we talking about? It's easy to say from a consumer standpoint, yeah, let's have them pay. Let's have these games always available online. But is that going to potentially impact the amount of live service games that are developed, right? Not so much probably from AAA publishers that have a bunch of money, you know, but I am unaware, and I believe most people talking about the Stop Killing Games movement all over YouTube are ignorant as to how much it costs to maybe take a live service game and make it playable offline, or provide the what I think I heard Thor mention in a video, server binaries, etc. At least provide kind of the packaging, the framework to get someone who really knows what they're doing with regards to networking and game development and hack and like kind of like coding something up together, or you know, bypassing sort of a server, and with what they give you, boot your own up. Like, I don't know. So if there's something like that, like that's a good idea. Taking a step in that direction is great, but I have yet to see anybody fully comment on it that has the technical and networking and gaming background. So I have a bit of the technical background, but yeah.
Stop Killing Games is a consumer movement started to challenge the legality of publishers destroying video games they have sold to customers. But the movement includes all this stuff from earlier, and he was mostly talking about the initiative. Well, the short for...
Let's go back to that. Actions, submit complaints. Yeah, the crew's mentioned here. Results. Okay, so not much progress on...
And he was mostly talking about the initiative. Well, the short version is the initiative is about requiring publishers to have end-of-life plans for games they've sold to customers in the future. So when they shut them down, customers can continue running them without their support.
Which is great.
The long version depends on what kind of transaction is being made. As you can see, it's not easy to explain in a soundbite. But if you notice, we don't make a distinction between single-player and multiplayer games. That's because the law doesn't either. So why make this even harder? Both the movement and the law are making distinctions on how games are sold. Also, that part he said about it affecting all live service games, yes and no. It would affect most live service games in the future, but the initiative is not retroactive.
But that's still, right? Like, that still is the whole issue, I think, that Thor's bringing up. You know, Pirate Software's problem is that moving forward, if you're going to put this sort of this taxation, if you will, right, like this heavy sort of barrier to entry to live service games, then it's going to be a big issue in terms of, are there going to be as many live service games made? Are they going to be free to play? These kinds of things. We have to think about that kind of stuff. It's good, and I think it's probably, you know, maybe it's something that we've gotten used to, that like MMOs or live service games, they naturally just go offline in 5 to 10 years or however long it is, and we kind of accept that. I don't know if as consumers we should have, and it was just a sign of the times, and not too many. I remember when there weren't too many MMOs out, and you know, you just kind of had to deal with the fact that if you wanted to play online in this massive world with all these other players, that you might have to pay an extra monthly membership fee. I think Star Wars Galaxy had that. I think Phantasy Star Online had that on Xbox way back in the day. We're talking like, gosh, what are we talking? Like mid 2000s? Like, so that kind of started it all, and it set this sort of trend or status quo. But maybe that's not where we should be in the gaming industry. Maybe, you know, publishers and studios should have to make sure that these games, because they are works of art, you know, persist throughout time. It would be good as a consumer that if you purchase a game, whether it's a live service game or you invest money into it, if you buy skins or other things in live service games, that they're available. But I do see that catch-22, the toss of the coin, the other side of it, where we need to kind of suss out the effort and whether or not it is reasonable. And I think there's a terminology of reasonable with regards to this whole movement. So, yeah, let's take a look at what, let's continue.
So that's one thing Thor doesn't understand, but he also seems to think this is about converting multiplayer games to single player. Once again, he made that up, and I have no idea why he thought that.
Transitioning an entire multiplayer server-side game into a single-player video game, which means rebalancing the entire experience around single player, rebuilding everything in the entire game. How are you going to do that with Final Fantasy XIV? You're just going to make all the raids soloable? Imagine the day that World of Warcraft shuts down, and suddenly you have to make it a single-player game for every individual that ever bought the game. That's what they're asking for.
No.
Okay, so Accursed Farms says no here, but I just want to say that in Pirate Software's defense, that's where a logical mind goes. Like, as the mind of a developer, when you hear this statement, this means that publishers and studios will have to make sure that games do not end, like the life cycle of the game does not die. Well, if that's broad and it's covering all games, and that's why I think that's why Thor's like jumping into the single player perspective and then he's switching over to the multiplayer perspective. Although Accursed Farms is saying that it's just all games. We just want to make sure that all games continue to be playable. But as a logical thinker, as a coder, as a developer, you're going to be trying to suss out those other scenarios. So he's just trying to make sense of what this ambiguous, vague phrase says.
Because they would have to sunset live service games as a single player experience. The idea that suddenly you need to make every single live service game playable single player offline? No, dude.
Correct. No.
Okay.
This one is
Then
particularly baffling to me because I've heard most counter arguments before, but until Thor, I've never heard this one. That we want the industry to convert all multiplayer games into single player ones. I keep saying it. You never know where gamers are going to take this.
Nowhere in there does it say that it's directly targeting always online single-player games.
Oh, he's so close. He's so close to getting it.
It is vague, and because of that, it will impact.
He never has that light bulb moment.
Okay, well, let's see what that light bulb moment is.
He is correct in that statement. It's almost as if that's not what the initiative is asking for. But those were his streams with a smaller audience. What does he say in his big YouTube video with over 1 million views that he had time to research?
If we're trying to kill off the practice of developers putting together a live service game, pitching it as a single-player experience, and then taking away support in the future...
now he's changed it again and is making up how it's about single-player games are advertised.
Yeah, that's an interesting statement. I wouldn't have gone there, right? Because maybe he's just trying to figure out where the whole initiative is coming from. But yeah, having a live service game being pitched as a single player experience, I don't think that happens often, but I might be mistaken.
What is he doing?
It needs to be specific about the business practice it's trying to defeat, which is specifically companies that are doing this under the guise of it being a single-player game, but adding online-only functionality that is not necessary and doesn't add any gameplay elements. That's the problem.
No, that's not it at all.
And there are some people that'll say, well, just make it all single-player.
Like
well,
you?
I've explained that doesn't make any sense in the first place. If you're making it all single-player, you'd have to carve off all of that, and it's developer time and money. These are two different ideologies, and that's okay to have two different ideologies. I just won't.
I don't think that applies to the crew,
though. Those aren't the ideologies. Nothing in the initiative is asking to convert games to single player.
Nowhere in there does it say that it's directly targeting always online single player games.
Yeah, so why does he keep bringing it up? This is a total red herring.
Okay, so I think Pirate Software is bringing it up because he's trying to say that this is where it's going. This is where it leads to, right? So if the whole movement is just like, naturally you have to have I don't know if it's termed letterhead or just like a kind of broad slogan statement to keep it simple and have people follow along. But that can also be misleading, right? Because does what Thor says here apply to the potential legislation to be enforced? Like when all the discussions are happening, if the Stop Killing Games movement gets its necessary amount of signatures and the discussions start taking place, well, what comes out of that, and does that impact this whole discussion and make it valid where live service games do in fact need to carve out a bunch of functionality or invest all this time and money? It's, is it applicable then, right? So it's not applicable now because we're just talking about getting to the table. But as soon as we're at the table and we're having those discussions and making these rules and enforcing them legally, what does it look like then? That's my take and understanding on it.
We don't like the idea of live service games as a whole. I get it. Don't play live service games then. Don't agree to those terms.
No, he's getting a new thing wrong now. We're not against them existing. We're against them being destroyed with no recourse for the customer. Just use logic.
Okay, so for me, I get that. We're not against live service games existing. This is basically what we've just heard, right? Thor is talking about live service games in this instance, or a lot of instances, and Accursed Farms is saying, no, that's not what we're saying. We're just against them getting destroyed. So what does destroyed mean in this context with regards to a live service game? It gets shut down. It's no longer online, no longer available or playable. That makes sense. That if I'm correct in my understanding, that's what Accursed Farms is saying means destroyed. So what sort of remediation can take place in order for the Stop Killing Games movement, if it gets passed and enforced, stop that from happening? And what are the impacts, right? If the industry has to start to transition to that, is it immediate? Is it over time? I'm assuming we wouldn't go from a minimum required amount of live service years. So, maybe we could say it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years that the game has to be online, but then this game still dies and you're still putting in resources. So maybe we do the whole method of carving out some sort of playable functionality or sharing server binaries or other things. But I don't know. This is just my understanding of what these two opposing sides are saying. And I see points to both of them. It's just one's in a consumer perspective and one's in a developer perspective or a studio publisher perspective, right? And neither is right or wrong. They're both right and wrong. So it just depends on the stance you take, right? And naturally, most of us are gamers, we're consumers of this product, this medium. So we prefer that, when we buy something, it's available forever. But then for the little guy that's trying to create a game, I feel like, that's kind of the scenario I'm in. I wouldn't want that to be a barrier to entry for me. If it's a big studio, like I said, they can afford whatever it might cost, $100,000, $1 million, I don't know. But if it's 1 or 2% of the bucket, I don't think that's a big deal. But I don't know. If you guys do know, if anybody out there has this knowledge, this information, throw it on the video, comment, please.
If we didn't like them in the first place, why would we care if they're being destroyed? He says he gets it, but he doesn't.
Let's talk about the actual bad business practices. In the case that a studio is making a live service game and they sell it to you as a product, they say that you are purchasing the game or you are buying the game, when in reality you're actually purchasing or buying a license to that game. I think that we should be fighting about that. The initiative is not trying to call that out specifically. It's trying to say that all games need to stay in a functionable, playable state.
Yes!
Which is not calling out the language that is being used to manipulate the player. Call that out specifically.
Okay, I don't know if he's doing this intentionally. I'll be charitable and assume he's not. But this is some serious obfuscation. He's complaining that the initiative isn't focused on another topic he made up. I mean, what is that logic? Hey, the initiative doesn't address how Capcom changed the look of Dante in the Devil May Cry reboot either. That may as well be what he's saying there. I am not aware of a game on the planet with a license agreement that says you are not buying a license. Our problem is not with licenses failing to inform people. Blizzard says they can take away your purchase for no reason. That sounds pretty clear to me.
That's messed up.
Our problem is those terms are so hostile to consumers and the medium that they should be taken off the table entirely.
Naturally.
This needs regulation. Forget video games. If you look at basic commerce for hundreds of years, when you paid money, you either got to keep what you paid for, or if it was a service, you were told when your access ends. The vast majority of online-only games do neither of those. The games industry is trying to upend basic commerce. I think you have to go back to feudalism before neither of those things are true. Why even have consumer laws if you have no rights?
If you try to tell me that every studio needs to run their live service game indefinitely or not want to run one at all, then no one's going to run them.
Oh no! He wheeled out that line about publishers having to support the game forever. He was literally watching the video earlier where it says it won't do that in big letters.
Okay, yeah. That's great. Hey, there's my game. That's what I'm working on. And it's supposed to be a live service game. It's supposed to be battle royale, tactical shooter. So you know, that's why I care. That's why I'm having this discussion with you guys right now. Okay, yeah. What the initiative would not do: require publishers to give up intellectual property rights. Okay, great. Require publishers to give up the source code. That's good. Require endless support. Okay, so that's great. That's getting all the details that we need there. I guess with that in mind, okay, you're not going to do endless support, of course not. Give up source code, okay, but then is there something else that a publisher or a studio can give the consumer that they can spool up their own instance of the network required items, dependencies, and have the game going? I guess that's a big kind of like question mark. Like, okay, let's get that answered. And then, yeah, obviously you don't want to give away intellectual property rights. Okay, so I mean, obviously this makes sense from a publisher, a studio perspective, and putting forth, you know, trying to enforce some sort of legislation around games being preserved.
That wasn't enough. We just can't stop gamers from going there, even when we spell it out. I admit, guys, this part hurts. To see the biggest voice on this issue get it wrong again and again and again, then put that same wrong information on blast to a far bigger audience than we can reach. It hurts. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand what we're asking for. Now, to be fair, it sounded like he was getting a little closer in this video. Yeah, despite being called 2, it's at least the 4th video he did on this.
You want that
Crazy.
to stay in a functional playable state. That means the devs have to release either server binaries or somehow carve off the game to be a single-player experience now. That's
better, but he's still talking about converting the single player right to the end. He never completely got it.
So that's what I mean. So here we're given a glimpse of, okay, yeah, that would be a solution, but you know, Pirate Software is still wrong. So it's like, what's the solution? Right? Like we're all on the same side. We don't want publishers and studios killing games. It sucks. Like, you invest time, money, even if you just level up in a game and then they kill it off and you want to hop back into that game 6 months down the road and it's just done. It's offline. Like, that sucks. Like, you want to be able to run that solo. You want to be able to save your player info locally, boot up a server. You and your friends can play on your own, or if you want, you could potentially pay for a server so that like anybody in the community could run the game. Like, that'd be awesome. But like, what's the solution around that besides carving it out? Like, at least when we're talking about these live service games, right? If you have other games where, let's say Gears of War, for example, they're coming out with the reloaded version or whatever, which is a remaster, the Ultimate Edition, I think, the next version of that. If Gears of War servers go offline, there's still the single player campaign, right? That's always available. And then there's also local multiplayer. Like, so there's local co-op and there's local versus. That's as good as you can get, right? With you know, you still have that same experience. It's not with randoms, but what happens in this live service game instance? That's still up in the air. That's still what I don't understand. And if I'm wrong, guys, correct me, please. I'm not out to get either of these individuals. I'm just out to put my thoughts out there and see if anybody else, you know, sees what I do.
So Pirate Software did not understand the initiative. Maybe still doesn't. That means the majority of his critique is about things it would not do, like kill all MMOs.
If that passes, enjoy never playing an MMO again for the rest of your life and taking away from every other person that plays MMOs.
It really wouldn't. And I've explained why in that video, but the short version is companies would have to stop liking money for that to happen. Lots of money. But his number one criticism is that he thinks the...
Okay, so it looks like it boils down to it's not enough of a cost that companies would not make those types of games. So that still impacts potentially smaller developers, smaller studios, right? If you have a studio of 10 or less individuals or a solo developer studio, and like this guy right here, and I'm trying to make a game that's going to be online, and you know, I ideally want to make a campaign solo experience, and hopefully that would be enough where if servers went down, the Stop Killing Games movement wouldn't have an issue or try and enforce anything. But if it did, could I, as a small studio solo dev group or solo dev, support this requirement? That's where I have some potential issues with it.
The initiative is vague.
Incredibly vague. Too vague. Very vague. Damn vague. It's vague. It's vague. That is vague. Too vague. Vaguely written. Vague. Incredibly vague. Vaguely worded. Vague. 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 This is vague.
It's vague.
This goes on. Well, from Thor's perspective, his logic is pretty sound for this part. But the thing about logic is it's only as good as your assumed truths. And he's said multiple times now that he thinks the initiative is only about single-player games. So since he's expecting the thing he made up, but that's not what the initiative is asking for, he thinks it's vague. Because for him, it is.
Nowhere in there does it say that it's directly targeting always online single-player games. It is vague.
Yeah, in fact, if we look at that long definition again, let's add a subsection just for Thor. Single-player games with an online DRM check. Those would already fall under this broader category.
Okay, commercial single-player games that run locally but require a connection to the publisher for a DRM authentication check, same as above. Okay, and that makes sense. That should be completely removed. Like, I mean, you can have that in play when the servers are online so that you can make sure nobody's stealing your shit. But other than that, as soon as you take the servers offline, that should be a quick toggle and, you know, never be an issue again, right? I think that this is the issue that the crew had. And it should not be an issue, and that's definitely an instance where you're killing a game when you really don't need to, because you're basically putting in something extra as opposed to just leaving the game as is and making sure that it's always doesn't die, right? Whereas if we're talking about live service games, they build out a game, it's got all this server architecture, and I think they go into that later. The Accursed Farms channel goes into that, but basically, in order to kind of carve that out, you're doing more work. It's not like you're doing less work, which would be in this case, which I believe is the case for the crew, but you're doing more work in order to make sure the game doesn't die. Which, you know, hey, don't want games to be killed off, but you know, what's the differential here, and what's fair?
So Thor is expecting this. Again, I don't know why, but instead he's seeing an initiative that covers all of this. That's why he calls it vague 50 times. The thought that we want what we're asking for and not the thing he made up seems to have never entered his head. The initiative is trying to stop the destruction of games. That's the whole point.
So I just want to dive into this a little bit. Games sold as a one-time purchase with no stated expiration date that do not require a connection to the publisher or affiliated parties in order to function at the time of shutdown. No impact. These games would already meet the requirements of the initiative. Okay, sold at one time with no expiration date. Naturally, just a normal game. Games sold as a one-time purchase with no stated expiration date that require a connection to the publisher or affiliated parties to function. Publishers would be required to implement an end-of-life plan so that their support would no longer be necessary to run the game once it is shut down. Okay, that to me sounds like that applies to most online multiplayer games. So live service games, I don't know fully what that entails, but I can just imagine like typical battle royales and whatever. And then MMOs. So what is the end-of-life plan other than carving out some functionality, whether it is providing network support on a local server basis for an individual to run on their own, or making the multiplayer experience accessible locally, right? I don't know. Am I crazy? If I'm crazy, if I'm mental, let me know. Games that are completely free, no impacts, since no commerce is involved. Okay, that's fair. So if it's free to play, but plus requirements on completely free games, as we see as overreach. Okay, so that's good. So if it's a free to play live service game, however, what if you spend money on skins? Where does that come in? Maybe that's the next point. Microtransactions for games sold as a one-time purchase with no stated expiration date. Publisher will be required to implement an end-of-life plan when support ends, so that the customer's microtransactions would not be permanently disabled. That's fair. This would necessitate having the game it was sold for in a functioning state, even if the customer might not be entitled to the game directly. See, that to me is more like, yeah, that to me makes sense, because somebody's paying for microtransactions or performing microtransactions, paying for certain game assets. That needs to be supported in a way, or that cost needs to be factored into those purchases. It's just as simple as that. I don't know if I would say the same for the purchasing of a live service game, because you kind of, once again, I don't know if this is just we're just habitually used to it, but we kind of know these games are not going to last forever, not going to be online forever. Like, is Fortnite going to be online in 100 years? Kind of know that it's not, and I think most of us are okay with, I guess Fortnite's a bad example because it was always free, I believe. But PUBG, I had to pay for that when I bought it on Xbox way back when, $40. And then I think you had to pay for it on PC, which, now I play on whatever. I think it's free now. But having paid that, are we okay with it being available for 5 years, 10 years, or what have you? Maybe an expiration date would be beneficial, and maybe this movement would require publishers to do that. Something like, if the last sort of consumer purchase, at the time of the last consumer purchase, the game needs to be made available for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. That's something. But then again, it doesn't stop the game from being killed by the studio or the publisher. So, okay, hold on. Games that are sold as a service with a stated expiration date. We would attempt to require publishers to have some sort of end-of-life build when support ends, but would probably fail as there is no basis in consumer law for this. Okay, that's interesting. You mean just across other mediums, or naturally it's not going to be there in gaming because we're really behind. It's a fairly new medium. Our only justification would be via art and culture preservation laws, which are very weak. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, to me that makes sense. That makes sense, because then you don't buy it, right? If you know that the game is expiring and you're just like, not worth it. Not, $20, 3 years it expires, not worth it. $20, 5 years it expires, maybe worth it. But yeah, still, ideally, I get the concept of the movement. You don't want to have games destroyed, right? It sucks to that being a reality. So if we can rectify that, that's awesome. It's just how we get there.
It covers the types of games most in need of saving. If we only covered this tiny subsection, that would save maybe 1% or less of games that get destroyed. This would do almost nothing. I'm not saying there isn't one, but I literally can't think of a game that meets this criteria. Every game I know of with single-player content that's been destroyed has been designed to run server-side, not locally. Older ones like that tend to have the DRM cracked, which is not an ideal solution, but that does stop game destruction. And newer ones with de novo or something tend to have it removed by end of life. So I say less than 1%, but this might save 0% of games. I'm not sure. The initiative is actually not that vague. Though to be fair, some people did get hung up on this part. A reasonably playable or functional state. True, that is not 100% specific. There are reasons for that. You know how in law, police can stop a suspect with reasonable suspicion? Or a jury finds someone guilty beyond all reasonable doubt? That's because the number of situations you face are so varied that the law has to inject some common sense somewhere. It's the same with games.
Yeah,
a multi-million-dollar MMO is a different animal from a budget arena shooter. it won't work making highly specific laws. That's one half of it. The other half of it is this sentence is an olive branch to publishers. I've heard complaints this isn't specific enough. Okay, but you know what the alternative to this would be? Here, I'll show you. The game must be fully functional and contain 100% of all features as advertised. So as a publisher, which requirement would you rather meet? More importantly, this sentence shows the EU Commission that we're acting in good faith and trying to find a balance. I think some of the people...
I appreciate that he points out the purpose that the vagueness serves, but it still leaves questions, open-ended questions for down the line. So,
asking for this to be more specific may not realize what they're asking for. I know some won't believe this, but a hell of a lot of thought went into the wording of the initiative. I think it's almost perfect. See, the initiative isn't even a proposed bill, it's a negotiation. Our side says we want games to be functional when publishers end support, so they need end-of-life plans. The industry's position is going to be against whatever we write and claim they need no regulation whatsoever. Then the EU Commission gets to decide who is more in the right here. The Citizens Initiative is the opening offer in these negotiations. Trust me, the industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars will make its position known to the EU. We don't have to make their case for them. So for this negotiation, simple is good. That's why we're straight and to the point for what we want. Then the industry will argue against that. Then the EU Commission might look for compromises. You don't start a negotiation with a bunch of compromises because then it will get so watered down you won't save anything. Oh,
I think that's a solid point, and I think that Accursed Farms and Pirate Software would just benefit from having a discussion that says, hey, this is the goal of this initiative is just to take us to the table and try and put some protocols in action so that we don't run into these issues, these scenarios that we've outlined, right? And then Pirate Software can throw out his concerns and that can be raised, and then ideally that they don't become an issue or there's some moderate solution or compromise, or the full-on solution that the movement proposes is doable. It's just going to take time and a transitioning period and certain mechanisms and all that kind of stuff to take place. But yeah.
Oh, and that long definition list are actually logical extensions of the simpler language used in the initiative. It's actually kind of slick. Plus, there's a character limit on these things. The EU Commission doesn't want you trying to cover 50 edge cases at this.
Government organizations do not want to spend the entirety of their day reading your shit. Yep, got it.
Phase. All right, so Pirate Software did not understand the initiative. But point two, he also did not make it easy for the truth to get out. I had never heard of him prior to all this, but during the campaign, I had dozens of people contacting me, telling me how wise and reasonable he is, how he's really pro-consumer and represents developers, and I should really talk to him. Great, let's do it. So this was my first encounter of him.
Oh shit, now this is actually really dumb. It's used car salesman garbage. This is shit.
God.
It's shit. Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to. That is awful.
That's super harsh.
That's a horrible goddamn direction.
That's like, come on. Like, be open to dialogue.
That's awful, dude. No. Eat my entire ass. The level of stupid that I just had to receive was like sitting on Twitter for 12 hours. This shit sucks. That's a really stupid-ass move. That's an incredibly stupid-ass move. I think this is ass. This is complete garbage.
I think he thinks it's ass and garbage.
Shit,
and he's
I dropped the mask
get someone to eat his ass.
I have no qualms about that. They can eat my entire ass.
You see?
The whole thing.
I was right.
That sounds stupid as shit.
Oh, yeah. I can see why people like him. It's like listening to Mr. Rogers. As you can imagine, we've been less than thrilled that Thor here has become the
Could you imagine if you put so much time into a certain project? This is what it is for Accursed Farms. And somebody with that level of notoriety, that amount of influence in the space, that's what they say. And like that's fucking brutal, you know? Like that's pretty brutal, man.
Dominant voice of the campaign, especially when he doesn't understand it. Though I did find the used car salesman part amusing, since if people could read my mind, they would understand how much I dread anything resembling sales or marketing, or just trying to push things on people who aren't interested in them. I'm not exaggerating when I said I've hated having to run this campaign.
This is the most uneducated take I have ever seen in games.
Now, as for that one, I do have a bachelor's in criminal justice, which might explain why I'm coming at this from very different angles than he is. You know, focusing on people having rights and checking what consumer law actually says rather than what's most convenient for publishers.
Like I said, different perspectives, right? One's from a software development perspective, like, okay, what are we going to do to solution this? And one's from a consumer rights perspective, like the social sciences. That's where the disconnect is happening.
I think I know where that comment is coming from because I've gotten it before. Here's what I think is happening. Online-only games have a client and a server, but a lot also have middleware that developers don't have permission to distribute to customers, or depend on microservices they have no control over, and the server software isn't even designed to run on a customer system. You can't just cut out the middleware and remove the microservices because they're integrated too deeply. That would still leave the game bricked and could take months to fix and be a lot of work. So I think some devs think we're saying all they need to do is just release the server binaries at end of life and yay, everything is solved. And that's why they think we're ignorant. Well, for some games that could work, but not ones like these. Plus, that's not what we're saying. First off, we're not even mandating the methodology because, again, doing that could run afoul of copyright law. Second, this whole diagram is looking at a game that exists right now and was never designed to have an end-of-life plan. Those might not be salvageable. So what we're saying is let's take a game in the future. No code has been written yet. It's still just a design document. Okay, so we have the client portion as usual. Then we have the server logic. Now we'll bring in our usual middleware and microservice vendors. Nope. Stop. Now the EU says we can't just brick customer purchases like we've been doing if we want to sell our games there. So that means...
And this happens all the time, right? I've had clients or customers and there's been certain regulations depending on the industry or vertical that we're dealing with that this is not allowed, so this practice or this solution is unacceptable, right? And that makes sense. I think the issue here, or is what from my perspective is, okay, so when does this take place, and does it include games that are actively being developed, right? I don't know if you can prove the start date of development or as soon as a game is shipped, we consider this not to be an issue. But yeah, if the enforcement of stop killing games goes into effect and then someone starts game development, it's probably not going to be too big of an issue to make that transition or make those changes, at least from point of inception, so to speak. It's still going to require something on the first sort of ramp up of games, live service games, for example, that take it on. So the first probably 5 to 10 years or maybe even more. But yeah, like I see what this diagram is, what Accursed Farms is trying to illustrate. But there's still hurdles, still issues. But yeah, I mean, maybe it's worth overcoming those and just to the betterment of all consumers of video game medium.
We can't keep making all these same deals the way we have been. Now we need to renegotiate with the vendors to allow for an end-of-life build with their software, or redesign things to make the microservices easier to sever at end of life. And vendors probably will renegotiate. Otherwise, they'll start losing sales to everyone who wants to sell games in the EU.
That is true.
But say a vendor refuses anyway. Then we need to go with vendor B, who will offer EU-compliant solutions because they will be happy to take money away from their competitor, vendor A. Or maybe we need to abandon one of the microservices altogether and come up with an in-house alternative that is compatible with an end-of-life plan. And if the server can't run on consumer hardware, well, maybe now we code it in a way that's more versatile and can be compiled to run a stripped-down version with less features for the customer machine at end of life. Or hey, if that's not doable, then we scrap that, but still give customers some form of server software at end of life because now we've planned for this, and inform them it requires specialized hardware.
Yeah.
And they're on their own for getting it working. And these are all just suggestions. The publisher would get to decide how they want to comply. Thor is not alone in developers trash.
The publishers will get to decide on how they comply. Well, the fact that they have to comply is basically, yeah, I don't want to say like death sentence, but it's like it doesn't matter. At that point, they have to comply. So it's like, I don't think any one of these solutions at this point in time, maybe down the line, one will be better or quicker and easier than the other, just depending on the technology and the the industry at that point in time. But yeah, right now it doesn't matter. You still got to do extra work to get that get in compliance.
What I just said. I don't know why, but some of the nastiest insults I've received on the entire campaign have been when I try to explain this is what we're asking for. This part in particular triggers some people to no end.
That video made me actually mad, like real mad.
Oh my god!
Like fake memes mad, like actually mad. Like I'm actually mad.
Upsetting people is not our goal, by the way.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
We actually want this transition to be as easy as possible for publishers and developers. However, we are stubbornly against proposals that won't stop commercial games being destroyed, because that's the whole point. Anyway, you heard Thor's comments for me.
That makes sense.
In light of that, I think I've been pretty diplomatic. I am just trying to get this initiative passed. If that means I have to get insulted all along the way...
It does.
Okay.
It's the internet.
So with that in
Don't
mind,
insult me,
I
guys.
reached out to him,
Please.
not expecting to change his mind, but to at least clarify things since he got so much wrong. If you're gonna hate us,
Yeah.
at least hate us for what we're actually doing.
Yeah, I can
not for
respect
things
that.
that are made up about us.
I got a message from Ross. There were many other misunderstandings in your video. It's clear that you hate the initiative, and I doubt I would change that. That is correct. I would encourage you to at least hate it for what it accurately is. I do.
He says that so confidently. Oh,
Well, let's take a look. Okay. This is Ross, the guy in the video you responded to. Based on your response, I think there's a combination of a value clash and there's a misunderstanding on much of what we're asking for. For example, WoW would likely be exempt from this measure since it is considered under the law as a true service. In other words, the customer is told explicitly when their access ends at the time of payment. Okay, great. Most live service games do not do this. Okay, which could run afoul of EU law. Yeah, they should do it. They should at least make a commitment. And then you as a consumer can say, yeah, that works for me. My money goes to that amount of time, and otherwise it doesn't. There are many other misunderstandings in the video. It's clear that you hate the initiative. Yeah, I mean, naturally this guy is a little offended, which makes sense. I mean, if you've ever worked on a personal project and it's taken a considerable amount of time, like as in you've worked on it for more than a year, like years we're talking, in the background, like, yeah, shit's gonna get to you. And I would doubt that'll change and encourage you to hate it for at least what it is. So he's kind of trying to reach out with an olive branch, but yeah, obviously they're butting heads for sure. The ego. He said that also value clash repeatedly stable is not a problem. So you clearly agree.
yeah, you knocked it out of the park. You understood everything.
In other words, the customer is told explicitly that their access ends at the time of payment. Most live service games do not do this, which could run afoul of EU law. Most is patently incorrect.
Patently incorrect. Okay, for those who don't know much about live service games,
I'm just gonna say I feel like Thor, Pirate Software, probably doesn't know as much as Accursed Farms when it comes to that statement. Just because it's so acute, so such an edge case. It's like, yeah, I don't know, like why and how would he know that?
that's like saying the Earth isn't round. He says verifiably false things so confidently. If his viewers don't know any better, how can I blame anyone for believing what he says about the initiative when he talks like that? It's incredible. And he does not wish to discuss this with me or anyone else in the initiative. Why not?
Would you consider reaching out and talking to Ross about it? No. And the reason why is because I found his entire statement over the YouTube incredibly disingenuous.
Yes, this issue.
I don't know. If that was the YouTube statement, was that the comment? That didn't seem bad at all. So I don't know. That's kind of fishy. I don't understand why somebody would make a bunch of videos reacting to something and commenting on it and then shutting it down and then not wanting to open up a dialogue, especially when you're saying this is definitive, this is the case. Whereas, for example, in this video, I'm just saying, what is it, right? This is all I can see laid down in the fork down the road, right? We'll get to that point if everything passes, but that's not necessarily guaranteed what it is or what the solution is. I'm more so asking for extra clarification, but it seems like that's where it's headed, if that makes sense. But Thor seems 100% confident as to the solution at hand and that it's completely unjust or not feasible, whereas I'm a little bit more open to the fact that, okay, this is probably something that should be implemented. What does it look like? It most likely looks like what Thor's laid out, but not 100%. We don't know. We have to understand the costs, the effort, the different vendor options, the solutions, the in-house solutions, these things.
Issue which has bothered me since I was a teenager and I've spent 10 years on trying to push back against is me being disingenuous.
That's a long time.
Where is this coming from? Well, it comes from a slide I had in my promotional video. The half-joke slide. He hated this, and I think he may have a rather privileged view of politics.
You want to put together legislation because it's the right thing to do.
We did!
Not because you can convince legal representatives to do it no matter what.
He actually thought that that's what they meant.
These are not mutually exclusive things.
The idea that we're going to go through this because it's an easy win, but not the right win? No,
I guess he's got a hang up, right?
So he misunderstood the initiative and misunderstood our intentions. And in his words, this is why he refuses to have a dialogue with the movement. So now I have to address it. Let's keep it basic. He calls me disingenuous, implying I don't believe what I'm pushing for, that this is some sort of con. That's uncharitable to the point of being silly. Besides video evidence going back 10 years, this is not a hard concept to grasp. I hate seeing creative works needlessly destroyed when people are trying to save them.
Who doesn't?
And video games are where I see that happen the most. Of course I believe in what I'm advocating for. Maybe start from there. I'm a little surprised that didn't sink in.
The idea of getting it to pass with an easy win instead of pass because it's good is a problem to me. Absolute problem.
That's not how politics works.
Definitely stuck in the mindset.
Things pass because they're good ideas? Tell that to people who still have lead in their water. A lot of gamers are jaded with good cause. The industry has been shaking them down every which way. The perception that it's hopeless to protect our rights against billion-dollar conglomerates is often correct. If I told people this would pass just because it's a good idea, I wouldn't believe me. This slide is a half joke, but it's also some totally cynical reasons that are often true to let people know we have a chance.
Politicians don't care about video games, not just politicians. Most people.
Do you think I or most people in the movement give a damn why politicians might pass something good? What we care about is that they pass something good. Yeah. We don't need them to be true believers. We need them to pass good law. This is as soft as it possibly gets in politics. I think most politicians would find this slide funny. It sounds like he's offended I have a low opinion of the political process. Well, I'm the one in the trenches here. I'm not sure if he's upset at me or just
everybody
upset at
should
reality.
have a low opinion of the political process.
I am too. Anyway, he went on to delete my reply to him. Thankfully, someone backed it up, and I figured, okay, he hates this.
Weird.
It was thrust upon him by his viewers. I'll just leave him be. Well, that was a mistake on my part, because then he went on to make more videos about me and the movement.
More content.
Now reaching over 1 million views.
More drama.
Still broadcasting the wrong information.
That's what we're here
on
for.
us.
I mean, come on.
I guess I'm being petty here, but this is alien thinking to me. Why would you call someone out, then run away from a conversation with them when they say there's a misunderstanding, but then go on to make more videos calling them out?
Because you can.
Sir, that is not gentlemanly behavior. All right, I know this is going on too long, so I'll get to the final point. Thor misunderstood the initiative, misunderstood our intentions, and misinformed a lot of people about both. But the irony is, I think he would have hated it even more if he did understand it. Because first, he doesn't see any of this as a problem.
Gaming isn't in need of saving. No, it's not a form of planned obsolescence. It's called the game no longer being profitable and we turn it off. No games are being destroyed here. These are live service games.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's planned obsolescence. It's just a custom obsolescence. We're used to games, live service games, being obsolete, getting killed off. That's what we're used to. It's not necessarily planned. I'm sure if they could keep it live for free, they would do it. But there's costs, and so they, shut it down. Like I said at the beginning, we're used to this, and so the whole industry has kind of said it's okay, but maybe it's something that we should, fix.
Yeah, you heard him. No games are being destroyed. Does he just say anything? Is that why he's popular? More to the point, and what I wish he included in his main video, is he supports games being destroyed.
A very strange demand from people in the gaming industry where live service games should live forever, whether in the hands of the developer or otherwise. And I can't get behind that shit. I think live service games getting sunsetted is fine. I've always thought that. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I have no problems with the end of a video game.
See, I wish he started his big YouTube video with that message instead of deleting it.
I mean, you can have that stance.
Instead, he presented himself as pro-preservation and not wanting the medium to die out.
It's incredibly important to me that we keep making games and that the next generation has the tools to do so that our medium doesn't die out. And it never will. And that...
Well, in a sense, he's stating what he means here, and it doesn't go against the initiative. We keep making games as developers or gamers, and the next generation can continue that process. But if a game dies out, it dies out, and you can still keep making games. I think that makes sense.
The next generation has
out.
It's incredibly important to me that we keep making games, and that the next generation has the tools to do so that our medium doesn't die out.
Yeah, so the next generation has the tools to do so. So he's not saying that the next generation also has access to the games from the previous generation. No, it's that we keep making games, and the next generation has the ability to make games as well, and games just don't die in general. So, yeah, but still, I do think live service games should be preserved. It would be great if that can be the case in the world we live in. We'll see if we get there.
And it never will. And that's the whole intention of all of this.
So he doesn't want games to die out, except he's fine with that. I think there's some cognitive dissonance going on there. And he's against killing single-player games that only have a DRM check, okay? But then says people who buy single-player games with more than a DRM check are stupid, and he doesn't play those.
I don't buy games that are always online single-player games. I refuse to play those because it's
like
stupid.
They have it immediately listed on the game
fan
title
of
in the store.
4.
It's actually really freaking good, dude. The game's fantastic. Itemization is great. Systems design is great. Storyline has been fantastic. The characters are good. The voice acting is great.
So is he saying he wouldn't have played Diablo 4's single-player campaign if it didn't have forced multiplayer also, even though he's praising it and appears to be playing solo? Or is he saying that people that just wanted to play Diablo 4 single player are stupid? I admit, I got lost on his stance.
That's a little
there.
hypocritical,
What's more clear to me is we're not on the same side. Here's a list of some popular games that are all at risk of being destroyed at some time in the future. The Stop Killing Games movement sees any of these being destroyed as a problem, and they're exactly the kinds of games that would start being protected if the initiative passed.
Okay.
Now, a lot of these do have single-player campaigns, but I believe they all require more than a simple DRM check. He says over and over that his problem with the initiative is the wording, and it's vague. But there is no wording he would like that also saves games like these, because he's on the opposite side of this.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, this whole list, this is a great example, by the way. But, it's very difficult to say, yeah, like, fully carve out or fully make this, like what does it mean where we turn this is a problem to this is fine? Like, how do we get there with regards to the game not being killed off because the publisher or the studio no longer provides support? Like that, like what does that effort entail? That's the biggest thing. The whole discussion is kind of like going on the hamster wheel in circles. Both sides doesn't want to give up, but but not realize that there's merit to each side. Like on one side, it's like how much is this going to cost? How many resources is this going to take? How much resources is this going to take? And are games of this genre or style going to continue to be made because of this potential legislation? And the other side is saying, we invest time, money into these games. We want them to be available as a medium moving forward, as so that the experience doesn't just die out. So we need some sort of mechanism where that happens. So it's not like one side is right and the other side is fully wrong. Yeah.
If he's totally fine with games like these being disabled forever, well, guess what? That's the position of the industry causing this entire problem in the first place. And that's the final point. Thor says he disagrees with how we're going about trying to end game destruction, but he also disagrees with the goal itself. No, wait, I want to be fair. He's only against 99% of it minus that tiny provision he made up. So once you understand that,
nobody disagrees with that.
Of course it makes sense that he's against the Stop Killing Games movement. Because we're trying to stop killing games. Now, if you're in Thor's camp and think killing all these games is fine and are as things should be,
almost done,
okay,
guys.
Then it's just a values
appreciate you still being here.
And yeah,
because I know you're going to be here in the offline
I'm not
video.
trying to tell you otherwise.
You're going to be here.
But if you think you might have been misled about what the initiative is, hey, maybe look at it again. Tell others about it. Help undo some of the damage. There is still time. It closes July 31st. Thor lying about what the campaign is about, remember, second definition, has caused more damage to it than anything else I'm aware of. Now, I've heard some people say, no, it caused a Streisand effect and led to more coverage.
Probably. I feel like it did.
If you look at the signature rate, it suggests the opposite. I've also been told a big streamer, like in that group I mentioned earlier, the kind that are so big they could end this, avoided talking about Stop Killing Games because of Thor's take on it. Remember, at the time he did this, Pirate Software was a well-respected developer looked up to by the internet community for having good takes on gaming.
Very much so.
And I was, and still am, the weirdo with no credentials other than not wanting games destroyed. So with Thor being seen as the smartest guy in the room and firmly against the initiative, I think that led some internet figures to not want to touch this, lest they be seen like a fool in the eyes of Thor. Now, as I understand it, that risk may have lowered since then, but it doesn't really matter if nobody else talks about it, because he was there to kill the momentum when we needed it the most, and we never got it back. Okay, that's it on him. I did not enjoy having to do that segment, but I've had to do a lot of things on this campaign I don't like.
All right. Well, I think that's it. That's it for that part of the video anyways. You guys should check out the full video. I'm not going to, because I've watched quite a bit of it thus far on other pieces, and I think I've heard and seen all I need to see. Yeah, I mean, I hope I didn't misinterpret anything. If you guys want to let me know in the comment section whether or not you agree or disagree with what I've had to say, or which side you're kind of on in terms of the argument. I'm assuming you're on the Stop Killing Games side. That seems to be where the internet is trending, and it makes sense, right? Like, one thing is, I can understand where it's a little bit, the movement can be a little bit misleading in the developer brain, right? That's kind of where the logic track is heading, for me anyways, is where, because like if you have a movement and it's called Stop Killing Games, it's like, okay, well, people are killing games and they happen to be publishers and studios, and it's like, why are they killing games? They shouldn't be killing games. Let's stop them from killing games. Easy sign, right? But if you're like, okay, what if these games kind of naturally have an end of life because popularity dies down? Like, is Fortnite going to be available in 100 years? Like, are people going to want to play it? Or is there going to be 10 other brand new battle royales that are a million times better? Same thing goes with WoW or any other game you can list off, right? That's where it kind of gets unclear, and you try and understand both sides of the argument. I come from a solo small developer angle here. That's mostly what comes into my mind. So I'm a bit walking that line, but I understand the consumer side, where it's just like, this is ideal. The consumer side is ideal. The game should live forever, right? Have that opportunity. It should not just die out. But I mean, things don't always go down as expected. But I right now would probably give the movement a sign if I was in the EU and a part of that. I'm in Canada, so I don't know what other options there are, but I do see both sides, and I think both sides have merit. So I think that just getting it out there and understanding a bit more of what each side has to say and the value or the points that they're making would be beneficial. Like I don't think we need to be bashing each other, and I think that it's just a dialogue or discourse that needs to take place. You can dislike one party or the other based on what you've seen thus far, but maybe you just need to educate yourself further. I could be in that boat as well. But then, yeah, I can also see, for example, that Thor is not open the dialogue with I think it's Ross, anyways, the Accursed Farms channel. So that doesn't look very good. So it is what it is. I think the drama will die down soon. But yeah, I think the signatures are getting closer and closer to a significant amount that sort of guarantees and locks in that there will be discussions and potentially legislation on the issue. But I'm done commenting on it. I appreciate you guys tuning in and watching on stream live on Twitch. We normally do, I don't know why I said Twitch, like Ryan Reynolds. Yeah, but no, yeah, we're live on Twitch usually, and we're multi-streaming all the time. I'm going to post this on YouTube. I normally don't do sort of streaming for YouTube while streaming content, but I figured today I'd give it a go. So I hope you guys have a great day, and yeah, sorry for the long video, but hopefully you're driving or at the gym or doing something else in life and you're getting something out of it. If you do get something out of it, please like, subscribe. Yeah, show me that you love me.